There are many iconic images from the Vietnam War, but most serve an American-centric narrative. Discussion of the war is often focused on the morality of the United States' involvement, and if its men and women could prevail against a mythic enemy, Communist North Vietnam, and its People's Liberation Army proxies, commonly known as the Viet Cong. In the end, the Communists emerged victorious, and their perspective has also found voice in history. But there are a group of men often overlooked when telling the story of the Vietnam War. They fought to secure their own country alongside their allies, the United States of America. And when Saigon fell, their nation, their home, ceased to exist. They are the soldiers of South Vietnam.
In 1965, 10 years after the Vietnam War started, the first U.S. combat troops arrived in Vietnam to fight alongside ARVN soldiers. These U.S. troops were well trained, but lacked practical experience and suffered from a limited understanding of Vietnamese culture.
The American people, even when they come to help, it looks like, they don't understand, deeply about, our culture, our people, and our enemy.
To be honest, many advisors experience culture shock, and it took them many months to adapt to the situation and become part of the unit. For me, it was not difficult because I was born and raised in Hawaii and grew up and was exposed to all of the Asian cultures.
I was an armor first lieutenant. Actually, the day I arrived, I made captain, but paperwork didn't catch up for a while. And being an advisor, all of my friends who had been advisors before me told me horror stories. And after the fact, I realized that they were giving me the good parts because it was really tough. One thing, I wasn't in a tank. Since I'm an armor officer, I really like to ride rather than to walk. So I had to walk, jump out of helicopters, and was surrounded by guys who couldn't speak my language and I couldn't speak their language. Being an advisor, because you lived in primitive conditions, you ate Vietnamese food. We did not eat much Vietnamese food in Texas at the time, and I was not accustomed to that. I got there and was told, well, Lieutenant so-and-so got himself killed yesterday, so we're going to put you into this unit to replace him rather than give you your armored cav job, which is what I was supposed to get. So I've gone from being an advisor in armored cav, which is bad enough, to being an advisor with an infantry unit where somebody just got killed in my job. Welcome to Vietnam.
When I was in XO of the Delta Project, I was a captain. And I've been to war at least 7 years. The detachment, B-52, they sent one captain, brand new captain, never been in a war. I'm American captain, being my advisor. How do you think? You've been trained in school, good. You've been in West Point, good. But how about a battle experience? How about our people? How about our country? You don't know nothing.
Well, I think the relationship between the American advisors and the South Vietnamese officers were by nature very, very difficult. The comment that the Americans didn't understand Vietnamese culture is understandable. Americans don't understand Iraqi culture or Afghanistan culture. And consequently, you could also say that the Vietnamese didn't understand American culture either. You're talking about two people who are very, very different in terms of their outlook on life. You would often have that situation where you would have a South Vietnamese officer who'd been in war for 10, 12 years, who had a great deal of experience, and you had a brand new American officer who was just assigned there. And you had this tremendous dichotomy in terms of combat experience. But the American advisors would control the air support, they controlled the firepower, they controlled the resupply. So there would oftentimes have to take a little bit of time before they began to work out a working relationship. And then, unfortunately, the American advisor was often pulled off for some other duties. So it wasn't the best situation, but I think a lot of people tried to make it work and other people didn't make it work.
Being an advisor was not an easy position. An advisor lived, ate, and slept with the unit, and many were not exposed to Asian culture and being in a foreign land. Major Nguyen Van Zin was the epitome of what a professional soldier should be. He was the unquestionable leader of his battalion. I was 24 at the time when I became a senior advisor, while my counterpart was in his late 40s.
What Americans know as the Vietnam War was actually the Second Indochina War. The First Indochina War, fought in the 1950s, resulted in the end of French colonization. But Vietnamese people fought on both sides of that conflict. The South Vietnamese military had plenty of officers that fought on both sides, some alongside the Viet Minh. Major Nguyen, in this case, fought alongside the French.
Captured by the Viet Minh, he refused to join the movement and was imprisoned. Freed by the French, he joined the French army. When the French departed, he joined the Vietnamese army and was later commissioned and served with the Rangers for most of his career. When I met him, he had been fighting as many years as my age, wounded on many occasions, and highly decorated, while I just had 4 months of combat experience. My position was not to lead, but to provide support as needed. I learned this very quickly and did not interfere with my counterpart leading the battalion. He was the leader. I was there to support him with artillery, air, and medevac support, and coordination with American units when on operation. Respect for each other was the key to our success. I hold his memory very highly and respect him greatly, and am proud to have lived and fought with him for 8 months of my life. He was a great influence, and I love him and remember him often. He was also a father figure to me and my best friend in Vietnam.
The Americans did not think much of the ARVNs. They didn't have anything nice to say about them. Of course, they didn't work with them, so they didn't know. All they knew was what they saw and heard about. I tried to get along with all of them. I didn't, but a couple of them I got along with very well. Whenever one of them got hurt or killed, it bothered me as much as it would an American soldier.
As far as what I think of how we should have fought the war, I believe that we should have fought it in an unconventional manner, the same manner that the VC was using to control the population. Using air power, artillery, tanks, all of the modern equipment in a jungle type of situation really didn't work as well as the general thought that it would work.
We Americans often judge our allies in measures of performance. We evaluate others on how we fight wars. I do not think we assess ourselves enough in terms of measures of effectiveness. Is our way of fighting really the right way? There's a difference between doing a job well and doing the right job. The Army of the Republic of Vietnam did the job they were trained to do. We must remember that the U.S. trained them to fight as a conventional army in terms of tactics and strategy. While these tactics might have worked in World War II, they were not suited for the current fight. Listening to Dennis and Curt's stories reminded me of my experience working with the Afghan National Army in 2012. I learned to empathize and care with these men. Both cases really represent one of the best missions the U.S. military has had over its long history. We get to help nations, young democracies, fight for their existential survival. The situation is often imperfect. Every time it takes respect, trust, and patience to get the best results. We should be proud of these alliances.